right, welcome to, where's my camera over there? Welcome to, I already started off weird. Welcome to Life Extension Live, our first live show in 2024.
I know, I'm so excited. We tried to do a fist pump,
and then it didn't work. So that was better. Okay. All right, so welcome. I'm Dr. Mike, by the way.
I'm Dr. Crystal.
Dr. Crystal, here's a true fact.
Okay.
Stress remains at the top of people's list of health concerns moving into 2024. Does that surprise you?
Right. We're all stressed. Your doctor's telling you, hey, if you have high blood pressure, you need to practice stress management.
Right.
If you're having trouble sleeping, your doctor's going to say, you need to figure out what's stressing you. Manage your stress.
Find your zen.
Right.
Heart disease, it's mentioned. But if you're overweight, how often does a doctor say, oh, we need to talk about stress?
No, they're going to say, stop eating.
That's what we want to.
Stop eating so much.
Yeah. So, and what we want to talk about today is that relationship then between stress, that physical thing that's going on in your body from the stress, and how that might actually impact your weight.
Right. How it impacts the decisions that you make, what you're choosing to eat. Stress directly impacts that.
Yeah. What you choose to eat, where you're packing on the fat, all of this kind of stuff. So on today's show, we're going to cover, is stress the problem? We're going to talk about the cortisol connection and the nutrients that can help to bring down the stress to help maybe you reach those weight loss goals for 2024. So let's get right into this. Let me ask the question as if I'm an audience member.
Yeah.
Okay. How would I know if stress is one of the reasons I'm gaining weight?
Yeah, so I like to put it in 4 categories, or 4 things that you can use to identify. One is if you haven't changed anything in your life is pretty constant.
Okay.
No major unusual stressor has occurred.
Yeah.
Yes, in the form of a stressful event. Maybe your diet hasn't changed. You're still physically active. You're not going through the change of life.
That's men too. That's men too. Trust me, I know.
So if those things are pretty constant, I think that's the first clue.
So what else then might be? Because the answer is simple. If, you know what, I stopped exercising and I've been eating a lot of McDonald's.
Yeah.
All right, so that's different.
Maybe it's not stress.
But if you reflect back, like you just said, and everything is kind of the same, I have it. But over the past 2 or 3 months, I've noticed pants are getting a little tight.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, and so that brings us to the second way that you can kind of identify is the stress. So everything's constant in your life. Number 1, maybe it's stress. Number 2, let's reflect. What's going on? So self-reflection is really that second step for you to just think about, are you dealing with any stressors in your life? Are you...
because I think there's an important point here. Sometimes taking an inventory of what's going on in your life is important, because there might be something going on, Dr. Crystal, that you don't recognize as causing stress.
Right. Are you in the process of moving? Maybe your child is now going off to college. Maybe it's something that's kind of a good thing. Maybe you're planning a wedding and you're excited about that.
That's very stressful. Okay. I've had sisters go through this. Very stressful. Yeah.
Right. So you can kind of think about those things that may not be related to trauma.
Right.
But it's a change, and it's something that you're trying to process and work through mentally that could be causing a stress.
I wonder too sometimes, because when you say stress, chronic stress, I think in the minds of some people, we picture someone almost like panicking, like lots of anxiety. That's not necessarily the case all the time. You can have things going on in your life, work stuff, relationships stuff, and maybe you're not anxious about it, but there's this underlying stress drive going on in your system because of it. Yeah. And so stress can be masked a little bit in your life. It's not always coming out as anxious or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
And then number 3. So we talked about Everything's constant.
So
Nothing has changed. Now you've done an inventory. I
I
like
like
that,
that.
Dr.
Yeah.
Mike, a self inventory. And then you can look at objective measurements such as blood testing for
Right.
cortisol.
There's a nice easy one right there.
That's a way to know.
the
Uh,
the objective test, or that's the standard.
right.
Right.
And so we know, and we'll talk a little bit more about cortisol, but we know that blood testing or salivary testing is a nice way to get more of a 24-hour picture
Yeah.
of your cortisol. You do your morning, your afternoon, your night cortisol levels. We know that it kind of fluctuate higher in the morning, lower in the evening,
Right, right.
so that your body can produce melatonin to help you sleep. So you can measure that through a salivary sample.
Right, and so it's very simple. A lot of those tests are at home, right? Because
Yes.
you're doing it throughout the day, and ultimately, what we're looking for, as a clinician, I actually looked for two things.
Mhm.
All right, number one, elevated cortisol at all levels. Right? So
Mhm.
when cortisol is supposed to go up, yours goes up higher than what it should. It's that kind of stuff. But there's another thing that I discovered looking at tons and tons of these type of tests.
Mhm.
Sometimes what you see is a slightly elevated cortisol, but it's blunted, meaning there's no ups and downs of the normal. It's
Oh.
like the rhythm of cortisol has been flattened, and you're just kind of constant with it. Maybe little blips like this,
Mhm,
but it's not the normal spikes that you see. That's also a sign there's something going on,
Right.
stressing you out, stressing your adrenal glands out, that kind of stuff.
Yes, and then if you're doing a blood test, I always suggest to do the morning and the afternoon
Yeah.
usually, and then so you want the morning to be higher than that afternoon. So if you're not seeing the cortisol starting to come down
Yeah.
with that second blood draw,
There's
then,
a
then there's a sign that maybe cortisol could be influencing your weight.
right. So everything's normal. You haven't changed anything, but you're gaining weight. Could be stress. You have identified maybe some stressors in your life, so you take the cortisol test, get that objective
Mhm.
measurement. But there's another one that's more subjective too, and that's just where are you gaining your weight?
Yes, which is kind of what we're talking about today.
Yeah.
Is that cortisol belly?
That's what, yeah, cortisol.
Are
belly.
you gaining weight around the central abdominal area?
Right. That's usually a pretty decent sign that that's cortisol related, and we have some research actually that shows that. Right.
We
can
do,
share that.
yes.
So let's get into cortisol a little bit more. So if you're listening and you really think, okay, stress is my issue here. I heard everything you said. Maybe you've gotten the test done. Who knows?
Mhm.
Maybe you haven't. Check that out. But you feel like this is it. This is I think I need to listen up a little bit here.
Mhm.
So let's dive into cortisol a little bit. And Dr. Crystal, can you give us like a little recap of what happens in your body when you have excess cortisol?
Oh, yes. So cortisol, it's our primary stress produced from the stress response, and it's designed to mobilize energy. And this could be, and it could be any stressor that you're dealing with. A lot of times you hear these analogies about running from a bear, but it could be trying to get to work in the morning.
Traffic.
Yes, it could be traffic or trying to head home, and then you know that you have, for me, I have to get home. The kids have to have a snack, and then we have to get to soccer, and you're just, there's that.
I get a little stressed just hearing you talk sometimes
know.
about what your afternoons and evenings look like.
Yeah, so cortisol is all about helping you to deal with those moments where you need more energy.
Right.
So it mobilizes energy reserves. Your body releases glucose into the bloodstream. It turns on everything that you need to have the energy to manage that stress, and it turns off things in the body that are not essential, like digestion.
Right. Slows that down a little bit.
Slows that down. If you are running from a bear, who cares if the body doesn't care about trying to
it wants to survive.
optimally digest your
Right,
food.
right.
Your body is not
It wants you
focused
running.
right. It's not focused on reproduction. And so those are some of the things that's turned off.
Yeah, and I love the idea, like, traffic versus running into a bear, right?
Yeah.
There was a time in human life when we were foragers. Foragers, thank you. And we would encounter animals. We were not the top of the food chain, let's say that. And so in those cases, you want a lot of energy because you got to run, you got to book it, or you got to fight. You got to do something.
Yes.
Well, now, today, if you're sitting in traffic and you're getting a little stressed out from that, you're releasing all this sugar, you're not running, you're not burning it, right? So what's happening to all that sugar?
It gets stored
As
fat.
There it is.
That's what happens. And then you start seeing it being stored as fat, and it spirals into the situation where you are storing it. The abdominal area it's a great area.
There's a lot of room
compared to other areas in the body.
You got you basically you have your armpits and your belly. That's kind of in
armpits.
Oh yeah, no, people get it right here, right now. Okay, we're gonna move on from that statement.
Okay.
But yeah, you're right. The belly is just a great spot.
It's a great spot, and that belly fat. When we're talking about the visceral fat, not kind of that pinchy fat, right?
Yeah.
We're talking the fat that's surrounding your organs, that's associated with causing with insulin resistance,
right?
Associated with diabetes.
Yeah, this is not the jelly belly. It's like a drum.
Like yeah.
Yeah. This is that when the stomach's tight, but it's big. That's that visceral fat just pushing out, and it stretches the skin, and you get a drum, right? That's what we're doing. So if that sounds like you, right? Everything's been normal. You haven't changed your food, your diet, all that's the same. Couple stressors in your life. Yes, for me, it's that belly fat. Even if you don't know cortisol or not, you could probably make that connection. Stress is probably a part of your weight gain. Right. Now, I want to say something real quick, though, because then the natural progression of this conversation, right, is, okay, well, let's get rid of stress and lower cortisol. And we got some suggestions for that, right? But don't we need to, let's take a step back.
Okay.
And, if you do things to lower your cholesterol, maybe manage stress better, that's not necessarily going to all of a sudden get you your weight loss goals. Weight gain and weight loss is multifactorial. Right. And it's the way I think of it, Dr. Christo, see if you like this. If you have high cortisol, you have a lot of stress, you're gaining some weight, and you do something, you go on some sort of diet, whatever it is. If you don't manage the cortisol and stress, you're making it really hard to succeed.
That's a good point. And the reason, I guess, kind of if you look at some of the mechanisms why it's harder to succeed is because that cortisol makes you crave
let's talk about that.
Foods that release energy quickly.
Quick. So
the sugars and the carbs and
the comfort food. That's what comfort food mostly is, right?
Yes. So
heavy carbs.
Right.
Yep.
Don't we love them?
That's what happens. So you got this natural stress response, releasing sugar. You're not burning it. That's fat. And then because you need that energy, your body's saying, hey, we need more sugar. Go eat some. Get us. So you got all these things going on that are leading to ultimately weight gain. And so, if this sounds like you, we need to address cortisol. And if we do address it, you're simply making it easier for yourself to get to that weight loss goal.
I like that.
Yeah.
It won't be the end all.
It's not the end all.
Yeah.
Another analogy, remember we talked about that, is people with low thyroid. If you have low thyroid and you're trying to lose weight and you don't fix the thyroid, that's an uphill battle.
Well, how about this, Dr. Mike? The connection between cortisol and thyroid,
and there is a
connection that cortisol can stop your thyroid, the hormones from becoming activated, that T4 turning into the active T3 hormone.
So it's all related.
That connection as well.
It's all related. So let's talk, so again, just keep that in mind. Weight loss is multifactorial. You being the nutritionist, we always like to put food first. So what we want to do now, let's transition to what are we going to do about this cortisol? What are we going to do about the stress in our lives? Now, we're going to focus more on foods and nutrients that actually lower cortisol.
We are.
We're not going to focus on the lifestyle things today to help you to de-stress, right? Today's more about what you can consume.
Yes.
And we always do food first.
Yes, we do. So I have a list here. Chocolate, dark chocolate to be exact. And thank you, our production team.
Hannah!
Fish oil, green tea, pomegranate juice, and surprisingly carbs, but we're talking good
The
carbs.
good, yeah, not just that's confusing, right?
But you see everything there. That's brown rice, whole grain bread.
Right.
That's what we're talking about. Good carbs, carbs that you'll find from your nuts and your seeds.
Yes.
And whole grains.
So there you go. Pomegranate, love it. Fish oil, love it. Dark chocolate. I mean, all that's great stuff right there.
Yes.
And so introducing those types of foods into your diet can maybe help kind of begin that process of getting a hold of that cortisol and bringing it down.
Yeah.
I do think we need a little help, and this is where certain nutrients come into play. We call it filling in that gap. Food is where you start, always.
Yes.
But we need some help often.
We do.
Right? We do. That's where the nutrients come in.
That's just where it is. It just kind of helps. I like to think of it as kind of taking the edge off some of these.
Yeah. Now we have a whole list of nutrients we're going to go over. And maybe at the end, what we can do is talk a little bit about like what our favorites are.
Okay.
Like, because I've tried some of this. Like I've done some of this.
I have my favorites picked out.
Okay, you
already.
do. So let's talk now about. And so you're incorporating those foods. What nutrients can help? The first one that comes to mind, and it's the first one on our list, is DHEA.
Yeah, DHEA is produced by the adrenal glands. That's also where cortisol comes from. You see often the stress response, excess cortisol can sometimes lower DHEA. They kind of have a partnering relationship.
Yeah, they kind of go together a little bit. Yeah.
But we do see that adding in DHEA, especially if you are at the age where your DHEA levels are declining, because DHEA declines with age. Did we say what DHEA
It's a
was?
hormone.
It's a hormone. I've just jumped right in there talking about it. DHEA is a hormone that helps to cascade into other hormones.
Right, like testosterone and the estrogen. And so as you mentioned, it does drop starting probably middle age, and it comes down a little bit. It's important for immune system, muscle health, and of course, cortisol balance.
Yes, and so research does show, we even have a placebo-controlled crossover study resulted in a decrease in 24-hour plasma cortisol profiles among older men and women after receiving DHEA. Typical dosing, I wanted to make sure we added that in. For women, about 10 to 25 milligrams per day.
That
For
sounds
men,
good.
about 25 to 75 milligrams daily. Obviously, this is based on lab testing.
Yes,
You can
please.
start taking DHEA, but you certainly want to get a test.
Get tested. Yeah.
After you've taken it for a little while.
I think that's good advice. We know, and anytime you're taking hormones, right? You should be committed to making sure your numbers look good, right? So that's DHEA. Number 2, everyone's heard of now. How many shows have we done on ashwagandha?
Look, I didn't even have to look at my notes for that one.
Yeah, we've done so many on it. Ashwagandha, adaptogen. In this case, it seemed that it had more of the effect on cravings, right?
It did. It improved these perceived stress scale scores. Basically it's a survey saying how stressed do you feel?
Right.
And your perception of being stressed after taking the ashwagandha, and as well as cravings. And they also measured in this study serum cortisol levels as well as body weight. And so there was improvement in all of the food craving scores, the happiness scores, the serum cortisol, as well as body weight at 8 weeks. But at 4 weeks, that perception of being stressed was improved as well.
Improved too. So the perception at 4, the rest at 8. That's pretty good, right?
And these are adults with experiencing chronic stress, and the dose here, typical dose about 250, 300 milligrams of ashwagandha.
The next one that may help you is fermented ginseng. Do you think, I think most of our audience have heard of ginseng, but what about fermented? Is that?
Probably not. You don't find that often as an add-in.
Yeah.
It's a unique way to deliver ginseng. Whenever you take ginseng, the body ferments it naturally, the
Right.
gut bugs.
The gut bugs. You
And
went to
it
Texas for that.
it kind of activates, I don't want to say activates it, but the bacteria produces a compound K.
Yeah.
It produces a compound that is giving you the benefits that we see from ginseng.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
the body's ability to have that fermentation process is not that great.
Right.
So you
So it's
pre-ferment it.
and that helps with the absorption and
Exactly.
more of the ginseng coming in.
Right.
So fermented ginseng was actually studied about 200 milligrams. I think that's what that was.
Yes, so that's a good dose. I'm not sure if that was the dose in this. Oh yes, it was the dose in the study, this double-blind placebo-controlled study.
And ultimately, it left to lower circulating cortisol levels.
Yeah.
Right. Let's move on now. Another one you may consider is rhodiola, and we can just have the list there on the bottom now. Rhodiola is another adaptogen, not as trendy as ashwagandha, but it's
Right.
been around a long time.
A long time. Rhodiola's claim to fame is that it's also very energizing
Right.
as an adaptogenic herb. And when we say adaptogen, these are just herbs that can kind of bring the body back into a state of balance.
Right.
And so rhodiola is one that people usually will want to take during the day because
it can it be a little energizing. Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
and shown to be another nutrient that can help with cortisol.
Right. I had a friend who did rhodiola. I gave them rhodiola because ashwagandha didn't help. So we moved to rhodiola, and this person was really starting to have like anger issues. They were irritable, right? Rhodiola helped a lot with that too.
Really?
Yeah. Now I don't have a study on it. That's just a case report. But it was pretty impressive.
Yes.
Hibiscus. That's another one. I would have never, like hibiscus.
Yeah, just another one. The research here that we have is that it's decreasing cortisol in older women. We have some data there.
Okay. And then now we have some really good research on these next two, magnolia and a cork tree extract, right?
Yes. And so with this is a study where the participants, their salivary cortisol was measured morning, noon, and night. And the overall exposure to cortisol morning, noon, and night was lower in the individuals who received this combination of the magnolia and philodendron.
Philodendron is the cork tree. It comes from the cork tree.
Yes.
Right.
And these are the bark extracts from that cork tree at about 500 milligrams in this particular study that we're referring to, but about 500 to 750 milligrams. And
I like that they tested the cortisol at 3 different times, right? That's important. And they were able to show that there was improvement in that cortisol balance through all those times, right?
Right, exactly.
Right. So that's a great one to consider. And then there's another combination. The last one we'll talk about: green tea leaf and lychee fruit. Lychee fruit extract. I love lychee fruit.
Me too.
Yeah.
Some people love lychee martinis.
Maybe that's what I meant.
We are not talking about a lychee martini.
But the reason I wanted to bring this group up, because most of these nutrients we just spoke about are having their effect closer to a little longer, like 8 weeks or something, right? But it's the lychee fruit and green tea leaf that showed a significant reduction in cortisol in just 4.
Yeah.
So this is a little more, I wouldn't call 4 weeks immediate, but it's faster.
Right. And so I'm happy we're bringing up that duration, kind of emphasizing that, because a lot of people want something now to manage their stress. And we're not saying that these things can't provide an adaptive or like a calming or a balancing effect sooner. But when we're talking about changing the levels of that stress hormone, cortisol, it takes time for that.
It does. It takes time for the body to adjust, get used to the nutrient, and start producing those better levels. And remember, all of this is part of a larger program, because we've connected your stress to weight gain, right?
Right.
And so, you're on probably a lower calorie diet. You're trying to get more exercise. And remember, if we don't handle the cortisol and stress, if that's what you think your issue is, it's just an uphill battle.
Yeah.
And so don't think of this as I need to lower that cortisol like within 2 days if I'm going to.
Yeah.
No, this is part of a long-term program
Mhm.
to get you towards that more healthy weight.
But I do have to say, and we talked about the green tea and lychee, and what makes it unique is that we do know it works quickly, because another study that 100 milligrams acutely decreased kind of that increase in cortisol that you would see that's produced after exercise.
Right.
So
That's true.
we do have data that following exercise, and this was a comparison group, the participants, there was a blunted effect of that cortisol.
There you go. And that was pretty quick too,
Yes.
right? So out of this list, Dr. Crystal,
Okay.
because that was a lot. There was a lot there, and we're not saying you have to do all of this,
Yes.
right? We're just giving you the list of nutrients that have research proven cortisol lowering effects. And so, what would you like? What is your favorite? Like, how would you start this? What would you do?
I would start for sure with DHEA.
Okay, that was
Hands down.
Boom, and see how that goes for a while.
Yes.
And then
as a woman, 25 milligrams. I would even, some people, 15 milligrams works well.
Yeah.
So that would be my suggestion.
Well, you know what?
Don't steal my suggestion.
I have to, because number one is DHEA for me too. There's no doubt. I would start with the DHEA, and if I'm still not getting the effects I want by measuring cortisol, that kind of stuff, I kind of like the green tea leaf,
The
and
lychee.
lychee. I think that's another great combination. Magnolia, another good combination with the cork tree. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's some good options there for you.
Yeah, and then ashwagandha. I mean, it doesn't. That's one I would add in with the DHEA.
You're taking ashwagandha
I have
anyway.
to take right.
You're already doing it.
But that is one, if I have a lab test and I know that my cortisol level is elevated, DHEA is certainly going to be top of mind. First thing I'm going to add in along with my ashwagandha.
Right. Well, thank you, Dr. Crystal. Great information. Don't forget, gaining weight is multifactorial, and how you lose it is also multifactorial.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things, from activity level, caloric intake, the type of calories could be important for you, but so can stress. And it's just one of those things where if your cortisol level is high because you have a lot of perceived stress in your life, or real stress in your life, right? It's just, if you don't manage that, it's just harder, right? And you're not going to maybe see the weight loss that you want to see, and reach your goal. So manage that stress. Consider those foods. Consider some of these nutrients. And I feel, I don't know about you, you're on a better path to reach your goal.
Yes.
Right. We have an article, right?
We do. lifeextension.com/stressbelly.
Is stress making your tummy stick out? Is that the title of it?
That's the title of the wellness blog.
Is stress making your tummy stick out? Listen, I like that. That sounds good. And of course, that article is going to have a lot more information, more on the nutrients, more on the research, and all that kind of stuff. So go check that out. Again, that's lifeextension.com/stressbelly. Dr. Crystal, thanks for joining me today.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Don't forget, we go live every Wednesday at noon Eastern time. So go ahead and click interested wherever you watch us, right? Because we go live on a lot of other social channels.
Right.
Ring the bell, ding something, right? Because you do that, right?
You do on YouTube.
Yeah.
You ring the bell. Don't just follow us. You have to ring the bell
Ding,
to
ding.
receive the notification.
Yeah, and on Facebook, I think it's the interested button or
Yes.
something like that. All right, so do all of that so you always know when we're going live Wednesdays at 12 noon. I'm Dr. Mike.
Dr. Crystal.
And we'll see you next time.